All right, so I think we have a couple people here right now. I think we can begin. So hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today in our interactive webinar. Today we have Jói Sigurdsson, the CEO of CrankWheel, joining us to talk all about CrankWheel Screen Sharing. So as he said earlier, CrankWheel is a screen sharing tool that helps you get video on your sales calls. So my name is Cam. I'm a product marketing manager here at Vendasta, and I'll be helping facilitate this webinar. And we have Erica Polishchuk, our product marketing intern, who has done an amazing job, and it's her second to the last week before she goes back to university. So yeah, it's her last webinar. So yeah, welcome Jói, and welcome everyone, and we can begin the presentation now.
Great, thank you very much. Thank you for attending. And it's good to see you all here. Strange doing all these big remote meetings over the last few months, but I guess an interesting experience as well. So I'm going to just share my presentation over the Zoom call here. Here we go. Okay. So now you should be seeing my presentation. So I wanted to cover a few things since we have a bit of time, but I want to make sure that, that I say, feel free to jump in anytime, ask me whatever's on top of your mind, wherever I am in the presentation or demo, it doesn't matter. And I have a lot of material, and I don't think we'll necessarily finish all of it because I really want to sort of ask you, all of you, to guide the conversation a little bit to whichever area seems most interesting and what you'd like to know more about. But in terms of the material that I do have, just to give you a little overview, it's all about screen sharing for small business sales. How can we improve sales for SMBs by using screen sharing, and not only by using CrankWheel. I mean, there are other tools out there. We're using a really good tool right now called Zoom. It's not necessarily appropriate for sales calls, not for cold calls. But it is appropriate in some situations. So one of the areas that I'd like to talk about is what are some of the best tools for the job for different types of conversations with customers. Because CrankWheel is really it shines for a specific type of conversation, whereas there are other tools that are better than CrankWheel for other types of conversations. Another thing I have material about and would love to discuss are best practices when you are giving a presentation remotely like this, right? So I'm sort of assuming that a lot of salespeople are, they're great on the phone, they're great in person, but this whole new, remote meeting type of thing that everybody's going through now is new for a lot of people. So I'd like to talk about some best practices there. And similar to that, I have some material on best practices when you are demonstrating a product or walking through a service offering. So that's another sort of set of best practices. And then lastly, I really want to show you CrankWheel itself. That's my baby, and Gils's as well. He's there on the call as well, my co-founder. We think it's a great tool for salespeople. And I'd love to show you both how you can use it on outbound sales calls.
It's over in the Phoenix area. It's advertised on the radio.
And I also would love to show you some functionality we have for really quickly handling inbound interest from prospects that are visiting your website. We have something there that we call instant demos. So with all of that said, I'd love your input. Would you like to start by, should I start talking about the various tools for different jobs, or do you want to dive into a CrankWheel demo? What's most interesting for you?
Hi, this is John. I'd like to see a demo of CrankWheel.
Sure, let's go there. So I will show you CrankWheel. So as I mentioned, just to briefly explain CrankWheel as I go into the demo, it is a tool for salespeople primarily. You can use it for all kinds of meetings, but it really shines for cold calls and for these inbound sort of conversations with inbound prospects. So let's start by showing off how it works if you might be on a cold call with somebody. So CrankWheel is an add-on to your browser. And this can be installed from the Vendasta marketplace. And it adds this button to your browser. And let's say you're in a call with a customer and it's going fairly well, or you finally reached that small business owner that you've been trying to reach for a couple of days. You got them on the phone, you got them a little bit interested in the first couple of minutes on the call, and now you're thinking, you might be thinking normally, oh, I should try to get them onto a Zoom meeting tomorrow or something like that. And the chances are they're not going to show up for that meeting. So instead, use CrankWheel. Keep going on the call. Just tell them, I'd like to show you something. Are you at your computer or are you using your mobile phone? And if they're on their smartphone, you would send them a text message. If they are at their computer, I'll show you how you can get them connected that way. And in fact, I'd love to just have maybe one person in the audience, if you don't mind me sending you a text message, I'd love to just do that, and you can sort of tell the rest of the folks what the experience is like with that. So let's say I want to share my full browser screen. I have a presentation that I want to share. It's on my screen. And do I have a volunteer in the audience who is willing to receive a text message and try the viewer facing end? John, would you like to try that?
Sure.
Okay.
256
256
334
334
0794.
0794. So if we were in a phone call right now, my script would be something like, oh, John, could you just put me on speaker? And then in a couple of seconds, you're going to receive a text message. Could you just click the link in that text message and make it open up in a browser? And for the rest of you folks, you'll see when John connects here, this area of CrankWheel will change. There we go. John is connected. And this little window here actually shows me exactly what's on John's, in the viewer window. Now, John, I think you probably scrolled up or down, or you changed the size of your window. Could you try something for the rest of us? Could you zoom in, like a pinch to zoom on your phone? Could you zoom in on something? Now, everyone, you see there's a highlighted area on the part of our screen share that John is actually seeing on his screen right now. And not only that, there's always, in any screen sharing system or web conferencing system, there's always a little bit of delay depending on the technology and depending on the viewer's connection and so on. So let's say I scroll down here, and there was a little delay from when my screen updated until when John's screen updated. And I can tell what the delay is by looking at this little window here, which we call the preview pane. John, could you try zooming back out? Just zoom so you're normal sized. Okay, that's fine. And just try tapping somewhere on the yeah, there we go. So if you watch this area, you'll see where John is tapping. There's going to be like an orange disc there. So anywhere you tap, we see if your viewer is on their computer and they move their mouse over the screen share, you also see like an orange disc moving around where their mouse is located. So that really helps you sort of see how engaged they are and stuff like that. John, can I ask you to do one more thing for me? Could you go out of your browser on the mobile? So let's imagine that, I'm losing John's interest on a sales call. So he exits the browser on his mobile, he goes to the Facebook app or whatever, and now he's going, yeah. You've all been in this kind of sales call, I'm sure, one end or the other. So now I know that John's window is hidden. I don't know what's on his screen. I just know CrankWheel wasn't on his screen. So I can say something like, well, if you look right here, John, that might be interesting for you. So that maybe gets them back to the browser, or at least it lets the salesperson know that that something's up and they need to do better. Okay, so thank you, John. What was that experience like for you? Was that a difficult thing to get connected?
No, it's very simple, and I really like that you can see where your user is looking at on the screen with the preview window.
Yep, it really helps. When you're talking to someone over the phone, you're showing them your visuals. That'll help keep their attention. And it really also helps you understand if they are paying attention, if they're zooming in on something, if they're touching somewhere, or if they do that, they exit the browser. So thank you, John. I'm going to end that screen share. Now, Another thing to look at is what if your prospect was on their computer when you're trying to connect to them. So this time I'm going to share a browser tab, and I'll share just this one. So to explain the choices here, I can share one of my screens, the entire screen. I can share just a particular program's window, or I can share just one browser tab. And you see that there's now a blue marker on the browser tab that I'm sharing, which means I could work in this other browser tab and I could be looking at topsecretintranetsite.com, or well, maybe not .com. So I can be looking at anything else in other browser tabs without the viewer seeing it. I can also line up a few browser tabs so that they are ready to show different pieces of content, and then I can easily switch between which browser tab I'm sharing. Now, once I start sharing, there are a few ways I can get my viewer connected. One is by sending them a text message, which we just sort of went through. And it's important to note that I never had to ask John what kind of phone he had or what kind of browser he had, because CrankWheel works on everything, every browser on every device. You never have to worry about that. Even like a really old phone, it's going to work. Even on old Windows computers that are still running like Internet Explorer 7, something like that, it'll still work. It works better on newer devices, but the overall experience is the same. Another way I can get a viewer connected is to type in their email address here and send an email to them with with some text and with a link to click, just very similar to how you might join a Zoom call. And another thing I can do is to copy a link and paste it, let's say, into my own email, or paste it into an instant messaging application or something like that. All of these things that involve email, they can take a few minutes, like it can take 2, 3, 4 minutes for an email to arrive with a prospect. So we don't really recommend using email as a primary way to get them connected if you already have them on the phone, because that can create sort of a 2-minute or 3-minute sort of pause in your call where you're both waiting for the link to arrive. Instead, you can use this approach that's sort of at the bottom of the CrankWheel window, what we call the public link. So what I would ask my prospect now to do is I would ask them to open up a new browser window and type in a very simple link. And that link by default is going to be meeting.is. So meeting is / and then a short name for your company. So for us, it's meeting is CW. But this can also be configured as like a custom URL. So let's say your company is Acme Corp. It could be something like meeting.acmecorp.com or acmecorp.com/meeting. So it can be part of your website. So I would ask them in this case to type in meeting is /CW. That's just short for CrankWheel. And then I would say, oh, and then could you please click on my photo? My name is Jói. And the reason I repeat my name is that sometimes there might be more than one salesperson waiting for someone to join. But typically, and this is true even if you have hundreds of salespeople, there are usually just 2 or 3 maximum. And the reason is this is like a reception lobby. Oh, I see somebody's trying to get in. Is there a viewer 36 on the call? I'm happy to let you in.
Yes, it's John again.
There you go, John. I'm letting you in. So that's a security thing where once a viewer clicks on your photo, you get a number and the presenter can let you in based on that number. And so if you're already in a phone call or a phone conference, you can use CrankWheel for multiple viewers, letting them in by this number, and it's completely secure. Okay, so that's how easy it is to get someone connected if they're on their desktop. Type in a very simple URL. It can even be hosted on your company's page. Click your photo, tell you a number. They don't really even need to tell you the number. You can just accept them right away. But if you're very sort of security sensitive or you're going to share anything sensitive with them, you can confirm that it's them by having them tell you the number. So now I'm sharing a browser tab. It's similar to what John experienced, what you experienced earlier, John. There's one difference that there's like a green disk highlighting the presenter's mouse. It's just a little bit faster to update than the video. And I'm only sharing the browser tab, so it's a pretty clean experience for the viewer. So this is the viewer experience here. All right, so that's it for sort of the very basic screen sharing functionality. You can also do scheduled meetings where you can add a phone conference through our partner or use your own phone conference. You can also do remote control. So you can, now with the viewers that are connected, I could let one of them control my screen or control my browser tab. So if I want somebody to sort of kick the tires, maybe teach them a system that I'm selling to them. Maybe I'm selling them, you know, a CMS system, and I want to teach them the CMS. I could do that through screen sharing and remote control. But really, the other sort of main feature that I think is neat to show off is what we call instant demos. So at this point in the demo, I might just go straight to that if anybody's interested, and then we can dig into the other material that I have.
I would like to see that.
Okay, great. Great. So instant demos, as I mentioned at the start, it is a way to take inbound prospects that are visiting your webpage, or they could be reading an email in an email campaign that you have, or they could even be clicking on a banner ad that you've you know, display ad that you've put out somewhere through Google Ads or whatever mechanism. And the intent with instant demos is to find an agent or a salesperson to call that prospect back really quickly, and also that once the phone call is established, if there's a need to do a screen share, we can do it not just as easily as what I showed you for the cold calls, but even more easily. So there's even less friction. So let me show you the CrankWheel pricing page, because we use it there for ourselves. So just as a demo, I'll show it there. So you see that here for our enterprise plan, there is get a demo. So everything after I click this button is instant demos and is part of CrankWheel as a product, and any user of CrankWheel can use this functionality. So as soon as I click the button, that launches what we call the instant demos lead capture flow. And the lead capture flow is something you can set up as an administrator on your CrankWheel account. You can modify all of the messaging here. You can choose which questions are asked. The prospect is always asked one question up front, which is what's their phone number, because you want to be able to call them. And you also, it's great to have their phone number to be able to call them in the future maybe as well. And then it's one question at a time after that. And so we start with all mandatory questions, and it's up to you to define which are mandatory. We recommend either just phone number or maybe phone number plus email address, and make the rest of the questions optional, and I'll show you why. So as soon as I type in a phone number, and I'm just typing in a dummy number here so that you know, anybody else at CrankWheel knows that this is not an actual customer, it's a demo going on. As soon as you finish filling in the mandatory questions, I'm going to click Get a Demo Now. This will change to say, I'm finding the next available representative. Hang on, okay. So that should have shown a notification on my screen. I've probably just turned, yeah, sorry, I've turned them off. That's why. Let me turn them on, and we can start again. There we go. There's the demo request. So immediately, as soon as the prospect entered their phone number, every salesperson on our team got a notification like this, telling them, hey, you know, check this out. Somebody's asking for a phone call. As soon as I click here, I can view the request that's coming in. And I can also see if they're entering more data, I can see that in real time. So they entered their full name, sorry. And I can see their full name here. I can also see that this particular phone number called 3 days ago, and I can see which of our agents called them. In this case, it's a test account of mine. And if they enter their email address, we also do lead enrichment based on that. So as soon as they entered their email address, you see this section got added, what we found online. So it's got my LinkedIn and my Twitter. It's got like the Twitter for CrankWheel and the LinkedIn for CrankWheel and a description of the company and all kinds of things. So as I said, every agent in my team got this demo request, and now it's coming again because I took too long to respond. And the first agent, sorry, the first agent to say, I will handle this request, gets to see the full phone number and can make the call, either just dialing it on their desk phone or mobile phone, or they can click here if they have a soft phone installed on their computer. And as you see on the prospect end, it changes to say, hey, this person is about to call you. Don't go anywhere, and don't close this web page. Keep it open. And on the agent end, you have 60 seconds to confirm whether there was a call or no answer. So let's say the call has been confirmed. And at this point, I can see all the information they entered. I could even ask them to enter more information for the rest of the questions, any optional questions that they didn't answer yet. And maybe this is as far as you go. It just turns into a phone call. And what I wanted to say is that at Vendasta and other customers, actually across our whole customer base, everybody who's using CrankWheel instant demos, do you want to make a guess? Anybody want to make a guess at how long the median time is from when the customer enters their phone number until an agent has said, I'm going to handle this one, and the customer sees that, the photo of the agent and the name of the agent that's about to call them? Anyone want to hazard a guess? Okay, I won't wait too long. I've already waited longer than the correct answer is. It's 8 seconds across our entire customer base. And the average time until there is a phone call established with any prospect where in the end there is a phone call is only 90 seconds. So using instant demos, it leads to a much decreased time from request until an agent is handling that customer and calling that customer, and this leads to more sales. There are numerous third-party studies that show that you are much, and I do mean like 10, 20 times more likely to qualify a prospect that comes onto your website and requests information, requests a phone call, if you call them back within the first 5 minutes, even if you're just comparing that to calling them within half an hour. So CrankWheel really helps with that. And now the final piece of it is, if I need to screen share with this prospect, so if there's a presentation I want to show them, or a product demo, or walk them through a service offering, I can just say, I can just tell the prospect, okay, hang on, I'm just going to show you something. Can you just look in the window where you asked for the phone call? I'm going to show you something right there. And now I'm just going to choose to share this application window. And you might not have noticed because it happens very quickly, but immediately the prospect's window where they had the phone call request changes to be the screen share. So you don't even need to connect them to the screen share. It's already done. So that is instant demos for you. Any questions about this process?
So it only works on the computer then? Does it work on your iPhone at all, or any other device?
So for the presenter, so for the salesperson, it is a computer-based product. So the salesperson needs to be on a computer and needs to install this little add-on for their browser. For the viewer, for the person you're calling or who's requesting a call, they can be on any device. It could be a mobile phone, any type. They could be on a BlackBerry phone, or they could be on an very old Windows PC. Every device will work. But yes, for the salesperson, it's computer-based. Although for the instant demos part of it, you can receive a text message when there is a request. In fact, I have a text message here from CrankWheel, and I can view the request that was coming in. And I don't know if you see this, but it basically says, okay, hey, you're handling the request, you should call them now. Or in certain cases, it'll say that particular agent already handled the request. I can view all the prospect info, and I can call the prospect here. I can just one click directly to make a phone call from my mobile. I cannot do the screen share from the mobile, but I can do the rapid response from the mobile, just to call them back right away.
Thank you. That was very good.
Sure, absolutely. So maybe just take one more minute in demo mode, just to show you what you can do in terms of customizing instant demos. So to use to use instant demos, you place a little snippet onto your web page, very similar to a lot of other systems that sort of add functionality to your web page. Or it can just be a link to a particular URL If you want to use it like in an email campaign, it can be just a normal link in the email campaign, and that can initiate the instant demos lead capture flow. And there's a ton of configuration you can do. You can, change any message anywhere. What is your fine phone number? That's it. It's updated. I can preview it here, and I can publish my changes, and that makes it live on my webpage. I can, edit any message. I can change the list of questions, change the order of questions, add more questions. Questions can be, text or number or email addresses. They can be, select one out of many options or multiple out of many options. So there's a lot of flexibility in terms of how you can gather information. You can also start with a bunch of templates. So we have 6 templates here that you can start with. Very easy to switch between, and you can also edit all the messages in one place instead of editing them in the sort of preview editor. Another thing is that all of this information is sent to you by email. It's stored in the CrankWheel system, and it can also be integrated with other systems if needed. So that is instant demos for you. So how about we talk about something other than just CrankWheel? Because CrankWheel is, I love it, but I know you have probably situations in your work where CrankWheel is not necessarily the end-all be-all. It is, as I said, it's great for these sort of impromptu screen shares where you're on a phone call already. But there are a few different types of remote presentations. So we just covered the impromptu one where you're on a phone call and you say something like, hey, maybe I can just show this to you. It'll only take us a few seconds. Another one is a scheduled presentation, where it's scheduled ahead of time. Maybe it has multiple people in it, so you need to schedule it ahead of time. Maybe you're scheduling it through email, so you might as well do it ahead of time rather than try to email about, let's talk now. We recommend, or I recommend, for the impromptu one, of course, CrankWheel. And for me also, if I have a scheduled meeting with someone and it's just one-on-one, in my opinion, the simplest thing to do is to just offer them a phone call and then actually use CrankWheel, rather than ask them to, download Zoom or download whatever other tool, GoToMeeting or something like that. I mean, many of these tools are really good, but if it's a one-on-one meeting, they don't really add very much to just a phone call plus CrankWheel, and it's a simpler experience for your counterparty. When you have a few people, a tool that is really good is called whereby.com. It's free to use for up to 4 participants. And the tool we're using right now, Zoom, is probably one of the very best for multiple participants for a meeting that's scheduled in advance. And we're using it now for kind of a webinar, interactive webinar. For a more typical kind of webinar where it's sort of just one person talking, anybody else can only send, text messages, like send questions and stuff. For that one, a tool that I've really enjoyed using is Demio. It's very good. It's completely browser based, so participants don't need to download anything. Right. Okay. Before I get into another section of this, any questions? Anything you'd like me to dig into in what we've already covered?
I just had a quick question.
Yep. Go ahead.
Okay, you said that we could add this to our website, emails. Can we also add this to Facebook?
Yes. Anywhere that you can put a link, you can add a link to the instant demos lead capture. So
okay, and the account that we're using in Vendasta is are all of these features here, or should we have our own account?
All the features are on your Vendasta, on the version of CrankWheel that's available in Vendasta. Yeah, it's okay. Feature-wise exactly the same. So I'll show you just one quick difference between using the JavaScript widget on a web page and using just the link. So if it's on a web page with the JavaScript widget, it becomes like an overlay on top of the web page. You see the web page is still there below, and if I close this, I just go back to the web page. Whereas if you use the link, like in an email campaign or similar to that. So this link is for CrankWheel. Then it's just a separate web page with a very sort of bland background. So that's the only difference really in terms of the functionality between using the snippet on a web page and using the link in like an ad or an email campaign or a Facebook ad, you know, or sending it through Facebook Messenger or whatever you want to do.
Thank you.
Sure thing. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about best practices when you're doing a remote presentation, because as I said, I'm sure most people are comfortable, you know, on the phone. Most people are comfortable, you know, meeting people in person and doing some kind of a presentation that way. But for a lot of us, it's new to do all these remote presentations, and so I thought it was worth just touching on a few things. There are quite many basics that are the same. I mean, it's pretty typical that your presentation is going to be a PowerPoint or Keynote or maybe a Google Slides presentation. So that part is largely the same. You might use some visuals like I'm using just to sort of support what you're saying. But there are some, you know, just some concrete sort of practical tips that I'll talk about. First is that, you know, it is good if you can have a separate monitor, like you can have your laptop plus a monitor, even if it's a small one. And there are actually even programs you can get both for iPhone and for Android, where you can use your phone as a tiny separate monitor. It's a program you download for your PC or for your Mac, and then you have a program on your phone. Because the thing is, what you really need the separate monitor for, optionally, but it is really nice to have, is it's nice to be able to have on one full screen whatever you're going to screen share with your prospect. And then on your main screen, you can have your speaker notes or some other materials, or you can have the CrankWheel control panel, which, you know, shows you what they're seeing and all that stuff. And when you're not, when you don't have a separate monitor, it's a little bit harder to do that. But you can do something like this. I'll show you. So if you're using Google Slides in particular, there's a nice, you know, you don't have to be full screen. It can be a window. Sorry, it's always wanting to go full screen for me. There it is. You don't have to be full screen. So you could be smaller screen, and then you could use CrankWheel like this, and just share the browser tab. So that's a little trick to give a clean presentation, even if you only have the one monitor. So, you know, that's nice. But having a separate screen is really convenient a lot of times. So I don't remember the names, unfortunately, of those tools, but I can dig those up, and I'm sure Cam can maybe send that to the list if people are interested. Or you can always email me. It's Jói@crankwheel.com, JOI@crankwheel.com. So let's see. Yeah, the next thing, and this is really primary about remote presentations. It can be difficult. It is more difficult with a large group of people than a one-on-one, simply because with a one-on-one, typically you're both unmuted. You can hear some verbal clues, but you don't have body language. You don't have, you know, the type of physicalness that comes with meeting somebody in person. So you need to use all tools at your disposal to try to engage your prospect in the conversation. So one of those is really easy with CrankWheel, like I showed before. You can have them point at things, and you can actually see where they're pointing in the presentation. You can do something similar sometimes with other tools, like have them control the mouse cursor for a while, or you can even just on your slides. You can have a list of things that you can talk about, and you can ask them to tell you, you know, what would you like to know more about now? And this is something, if we go into the demo material that I'll also talk about, but is, you know, yes, you need to have, there is a standard part of your presentation, or maybe it's not fully standard. Maybe you still customize it for each prospect that you're talking to. But you want to complete that part of your presentation as quickly as possible, and then have the person you're talking to sort of guide the conversation a little bit. That will keep them a lot more engaged. You can also use tools, like one tool that I'll show you, which can give you just interactivity in the presentation. So I want to show you this example. This can be applied to a lot of businesses, maybe not everyone, but a lot of times you might show something like a return on investment calculator that is unique to the service or product offering that you're offering them. And it could even be unique to their business. But I'll show you how it goes. It's essentially a spreadsheet, something like this. I have here an imaginary company called Short Cycle, which is focused on doing sort of the same thing that CrankWheel is, which is to shorten the sales cycle. Okay, so let's imagine this is a company with some kind of service or product offering that helps you shorten the sales cycle for your sales team. And then you might say something like, okay, well, let's do an analysis of how much time our product or service could save your company. How many full-time sales agents do you have? And then you enter that into the field here. Okay, let's say you have 3 full-time sales agents, and what's the now you're engaging with your prospect. You're asking questions, they're answering, you're filling in the answers to their questions, or you could even use remote control to have them allow them to fill in the answers directly. So let's say the next question might be, how do they spend their time? How much percent of their time goes into prospecting? How much is pre-close calls? How much is the actual closing call or meeting where they try to actually make the sale? And how much is admin or other stuff? So let's just put some imaginary responses in here. Prospecting is 20%, pre-close is 60, and then I'm missing 10% here for closing calls. Yep. And let's say there are typically 3 calls that are pre-close, and then the 4th call typically is the closing call. And we're just going to assume that Short Cycle saves you 1 call. And you can sort of play with this when you're talking to the prospect. This is really your sell. Like, well, I've shown you the product. How many calls do you think it might save you in a typical sales cycle? And you try to get that number up as high as you can. And then you have a calculation here that says, Short Cycle is going to save 20% of your sales team's time, or 101 hours freed up every month because you have those 3 agents. So this type of a calculator can be a really effective tool just to engage with the prospect. Of course, it's not something you start with, from minute 1. It's more like talk a little bit, make sure they're qualified, give them your presentation, show them the service that you're offering, or maybe to demonstrate the product, and then maybe you go here, just to go for the close essentially. Now that you've shown them, it saves them, 20% of their sales reps' time. That's when you ask them, if it does that, wouldn't it be a reasonable price to pay X dollars per month, something like that. So that's a tool that I think is really useful for remote presentations. Just a very interactive tool. Get the calculator going, ask them to help you fill in. That's the end of that section. So anything you'd like to dig in here, or anything you'd like to go back to for the other material that we already covered? Any questions on that part of it? Okay. All right. So in that case, I will dive in. This is more specific to if you are giving a demonstration of a product, but it can also, a lot of this applies to if you're walking through a service offering. So, the way you will actually do business with them if they engage with your company. So let's say it's a type of an agency, then it's not a demonstration, but it's a walkthrough of how you might engage with them. But it's focused on sort of product demonstrations. So let's talk about that a little bit. And these product demonstrations, they are sales calls. Same thing if it's a walkthrough of a service offering. So first thing is, as soon as you're through those first couple of minutes of just sort of saying hi and you know, telling them who you are and asking them who they are and how they do business and so on, you should set expectations about what you'll cover in the demo. You know, what's going to happen. And this is useful because you want them to both engage with you, and if they know approximately what's going to happen in the demo, there may be times when they'd like to steer the conversation a little bit differently, or speed it up, you know, speed over one part to have more time for another. So always set expectations, you know, expectations like this will take about 25 minutes or this will take about 50 minutes. We'll spend a few minutes I'll spend a few minutes with you just to give you an overview of the product. And after that, I'd really like your input on, you know, which parts of the product you'd like to further explore, because it's a big product and I don't want to spend too much of your time on parts that might not be that interesting for you. But feel free to ask me to dig into anything. These are the kind of expectations that you could set. You could also say something like, you know, at the end of this call, I would like for both of us to be in a position where I can ask you if there's any reason why you wouldn't buy this, or I can ask you, you know, if this is a product that is of interest to you, and what might be a good next step to, you know, further our conversation or to help you with a purchase decision. So that kind of expectation, if you set it early on in the sales call, that really helps you go for the close at the end, because you've already sort of set the expectation that yes, you will be asking for their business at the end of the call, or at least you'll be asking for concrete next steps if they are interested. And you know, if you're selling to someone and they're not interested and it's going to be a no, it's better to figure that out early on, and that way you save your time and you also save their time. You should plan ahead how you're going to spend the time. So if it's a 30-minute session, you know, it's sort of booked for 30 minutes. You need to, you don't need to be on the clock. I mean, but although initially it can help to have a, you know, set a stopwatch on your phone and keep it to the side or something like that, just to make sure you know how much time you've already spent. And you need to make sure you have enough time for each part of the demo. There's the, you know, the intro and the qualification. There's the sort of standard part of the demo. There's digging into the stuff that they're interested in. And then very importantly, you need a few minutes at the end to either set up a concrete next step or try to go for the close. Ask them to actually give you their business. So very important. Otherwise, you might you know, spend all of the time doing a demo and there's no time to set up the next meeting or ask them to start a subscription or whatever. Really a corollary of what I already said, don't try to show everything. You know, your service offering, if that's what you're walking through, it's going to be always going to be broader than what you have time to show. If it's your product, don't try to show all parts of the product. Just start with a high-level overview, dig into things that they are actually interested in. This will also help further qualify them. I mean, you probably start the meeting by doing a bit of qualification, but if you let them guide the flow of the demo, let them tell you, you know, what they're interested in, what their concerns are, if they maybe have another product that's competing already, what they're not satisfied with there, what they want to contrast with your product. This really helps you qualify them even better. And again, a corollary of what I've already said, you know, don't just do a one-size-fits-all presentation. Maybe 5 minutes tops would be your sort of standard presentation. After that, let them guide the way. Listen as much as you talk. This is a hard one for my colleague, Gilsey. Gilsey, are you still there?
Mm-hmm.
He's a very good salesperson, but he talks a lot.
It's been difficult for me not to talk. But
in this meeting, yeah, I'm sure.
yes, yes.
Yeah, but listening is, you know, very important if you're trying to qualify the prospect. It's very important to hear their concerns again. And yeah, this is stuff we've already covered. And at the end, you know, I like to use the line, now that you've seen the demo, is there anything preventing you from making a decision on whether or not to purchase? That doesn't mean they make the decision right there and then, but you'd love to hear, no, I think I know everything I need. but I might need to pull in this other person for a second demo, or but I need to discuss it with my boss tomorrow. And that's when you set up the concrete next steps. You know, you ask for a phone call, and you set the time of that call. So that's a little bit about product demo best practices that we've learned through, you know, demonstrating CrankWheel, and that we've learned from our customers, who a lot of them use CrankWheel to demonstrate products and service offerings. So that's just a little bit on that. And I'm through the material that I have had. So, but we do still have features of CrankWheel that we haven't looked at. So if there's anything you'd be interested in, please ask, and I'm happy to show it off. Or if there are any questions from the audience, I would love to answer those.
Hi, it's Melissa here. You mentioned something about handling inbound. Did you cover that with the like the instant demo?
Yes, yes, that would be the instant demos functionality. So, you know, the intent there is you have this ability to add to your web page a widget that will do the lead capture for you, and by showing an instant notification on the screen for all your salespeople, and also by sending them a text message where they can, where they can immediately call the prospect, and it's like a first come, first served type of competition between your salespeople. That leads to extremely short response times, which in turn lead to very much improved sales. Depends on your industry, of course, but for sure, there's a lot of research showing that you are much more likely to qualify the prospect successfully if you call them back right away, mostly because you're much more likely to reach them. I mean, even if you wait for half an hour before you call somebody who asked for a phone call on your website, even if it's just half an hour, I mean, if they're seeking a solution, they're somewhat likely to find that solution, you know, from somebody else in that half hour. So if you're the business that responds immediately, you are that much more likely to get their business. So that's what Instant Demos helps with. And I'm happy to walk through part of that functionality again if folks are interested.
Well, I was thinking about Facebook. And so say if you set something up on Facebook.
Okay, yep.
Rather than just a phone call, like having a contact number, can you set something like this up so they can contact you, have the opportunity to have instant contact? Okay.
Absolutely, yes. You can use it just as a link. So as long as, you know, if you could put it behind an image on Facebook as a link for that image and say, you know, get a call from us right away. Yep, absolutely.
Okay. That's good. I like this.
Yep. I mean, it's kind of amazing how much of a difference it makes in terms of your inbound leads. Just that, you know, I mean, if you call them, well, you or someone on your sales team calls them back within 20 seconds, that is a wow factor. You know, they will remember that, and they may not search any further just because you wowed them with your instant, you know, service and ability to you know, also screen share in that phone call.
Where can you set up the hours that you're available? And are there any autoresponders, so when you're not available, or FAQs that you can set up?
That's a great question, Karen. Let me share my screen again here. So you don't need to set up your hours. If you don't, then there's a heuristic that CrankWheel uses. So if none of your salespeople have been at their computer, using their computer actively in the last 10 minutes, then CrankWheel sort of assumes that they are away, and it'll actually change the messaging and the behavior. So I'll give you just a quick peek at that. So if none of your agents seem to be available, then the messaging here changes, and so it's a different set of messages, and you can modify that, and the behavior also changes. So when I enter my phone number here, it just goes straight to requesting a live demo. Whereas if you have some agents available and I enter my phone number, it sort of shows a spinner and it sets the expectation that somebody's going to call you right away. So there's that. This happens sort of automatically, just based on whether your agents are, whether your salespeople are, using their computer and they have CrankWheel installed or not. You can also set office hours. So here it is. You can turn on office hours, and then you can configure your hours. You can have standard office hours per day, depending on the day of the week. So let's say you're open Saturdays. You can say you're open from 9 a.m. to noon, let's say. So and then you can do exceptional hours. So if there's let's say let's just take Christmas Day as an example. And you can say you're closed that day. And let's say next Sunday you're gonna stay open for the whole day. You can do that. Oops. Right, like this. So you can configure any hours you need. And there's a separate set of messages for out of office in case you want it to be different from the case where CrankWheel sort of automatically determines that nobody's available. But the behavior is the same, and you can use the same messages. In fact, by default, it uses the same messages. So does that answer your question? Was there another part to it that I'm forgetting? Sorry, Karen.
That was great. Thank you so much. The other part was about FAQs. So if you're not available.
Yes, I felt like I was forgetting something. Thank you. Yes, if let's say we're in the case where nobody's available, it actually will show in all the cases, but it'll show after a bit of a timeout in the case where CrankWheel thinks you have some agents available. So what we can do is we can add a post message. So that's one thing. You can have a message and a headline, and you can even have an embedded video, like a YouTube video, something like that, that you want to show them if no agent was able to get to them right away. So this is one thing. So let's actually, we can do this very quickly. Let's see. Just getting a video link here. Let's get that video. And you would just get the link for embedding, which is here. So this would be for YouTube. Okay. So there's the video URL, and I could say something like, sorry, everybody's out getting tacos, but we'll call you as soon as we can. Something like that. So now when I go through, I'll see this. You're all set. We'll get in touch as soon as possible, and then I'll see the sorry message at the end of that.
Can you share your screen?
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, so sorry about that. I thought I was sharing. And they call me an expert on screen sharing. Well. There we go. So here's where I set it up, just so you can see that. It's just I can set an embed URL for a video. I can set a headline and a message. And at the end of the lead capture process, it shows up within the lead capture, and that person can play the video if they want, and then they can close the window. Another thing you can do is if you would like to offer them, if nobody's available right now, if you'd like to offer them the ability to book a meeting for later, then you can do that. Right now, this is done through a third-party system, so you can use any kind of third-party system that you like. We use this thing ourselves called Calendly. It's it's a very nice system and commonly used. So I'm just going to copy this link. So what I can do is I can add a calendar link, and here's the link to my booking page. This could also be to like a team booking page if you have a booking system like that. So save changes for that. And now what happens if they go through the lead capture process and nobody's available, or it's outside of office hours, or if CrankWheel thought that some folks might be available to call them, but then nobody calls them within about 90 seconds, then they'll also see this. So let's say they go through the process. And then here it's going to say you're all set, but if you'd like, you can schedule a meeting, and that'll just bring them over to the booking page. So hopefully that makes sense.
It does. Thank you so much. This is great.
You're welcome.
Hi, I
All right.
think I have
Yes.
one more question here. Does this integrate well with Facebook Messenger, or would I just set up everything manually with a link inside of Messenger? You know how you could set up an auto response or pre-response.
Right. That's a great question, Melissa. Thank you. At the moment, we don't have any specific integration with Facebook Messenger. So the way to use them together would simply be to use the link to your instant demos capture, or you can use the link to your the sort of reception lobby page if you just want them to join a meeting directly there.
Okay.
If you are chatting with them and you want to invite them into a meeting, you can use our copy link functionality to copy a link to an ongoing screen share and paste it right into the messenger. So that is one way to do it. But we don't have anything sort of specific for Facebook Messenger, but those are approaches you could use for any chat application.
Okay.
All right. I think that's it. Does anybody have any more questions? Okay, if there are no more questions, for all the participants, please expect a follow-up email for this webinar, and that's where we'll link both the recording and the presentation deck. And Jói, thanks so much for joining us today, giving us an awesome and interactive demo for CrankWheel. And to everyone, thanks for taking the time to join us too.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Have a lovely day, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.